Yeah! Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Panda's Odyssey, the podcast. Greetings to all my Panda maniacs, my Panda followers, the cherished members of the Legion of Pandas, any other kind of ridiculous title I can give all my listeners and followers and friends to make them feel special and cherished. Today, we will do an Odyssey in review. We will look back on some of the stops I have been to. We'll start off right at the start of the Odyssey, my trek across Canada. Now, when I first was planning the Odyssey, I actually instantly just jumped to Europe and Asia. And I probably spent a few months of planning and researching and looking into traveling across Europe and Asia until I actually came to my senses and realized, hey, I live in a country I have not yet seen. For those that don't know, who've never looked at a map, who are geographically challenged, Canada is one of the biggest countries in the world. I believe it's second to Russia. Just a look into how big it is. A province in Canada is on average 2.5 times bigger than Germany. Then we have a lot of land. There's a lot of space. There's a lot of space between cities is what I'm getting at. So when your family is spread out in Canada, that would be like a family that is from London, England, and has members in capital cities all across Europe into Asia. You can't really just drive over to India from Europe. From London. I imagine you could, but it's a long trek. I first started looking into how can I travel across Canada and see this beautiful country I have yet to see. And since I do have a large spread out family, I instantly started looking into where all my good friends I grew up with and my family members all are, and then started looking into where is a cool jiu-jitsu club nearby them that I can go and visit. I quickly put together a schedule of sorts to travel across Canada, and it grew and grew, and before I knew it, I hit almost 50 gyms across Canada in 3.5 months. Of course, I traveled across Canada during the winter. To be a true Canadian, you have to see all of Canada in the blistering cold of the blizzards and snow and all a lot of great stuff. Yeah. I have many stories about that. In fact, let's start off with one of those. Let's start off with one of my trips across Canada about my adventures with the snow. The classical stories of Canada being a giant blanket of snow. So I traveled across Canada in the winter while taking the buses. Now, if you're my friends who backpack across Europe, or any of my European friends, and you think of the buses, you think the Flixbus. You think not a bad trip. The Greyhound here in North America is several steps below the Flixbus. I would say the Greyhound in North America is probably on par or below commercial buses I saw in Thailand. Yeah, it was. They were not fun trips, to be honest, but they're cheap and they get you where you got to go. So one time I was traveling across Canada, and at this one point, our bus is trying to drive through a blizzard, and the weather is getting worse. We're getting more and more behind schedule. The visibility in front of us is getting worse and worse. We're driving slower and slower. People are looking on their phones to look at our schedule to see the updates, and realizing that Weather Watch has closed. The weather network is announcing that our road that we're on is closed by the province, by the police, that it's not safe to be driving on it. It's closed behind us. It's closed in front of us. We are stuck. We get into a small town in the very middle of the night. We're about 4 or 5 hours behind schedule. We pull up to, of course, an ice rink, and we head inside, and we are stuck. The Greyhound driver, the bus driver, is trying to radio into his dispatch to find out what he is supposed to do. Everyone is calling the Greyhound bus service to try and find out what they are supposed to do, because we are trapped. We cannot leave. We can't go back. We can't go forward. We are snowed in this small town, stuck in a ice hockey rink, of all places. Now, shortly after being stuck there and making all these calls, we are realizing we're stuck overnight. And the bus service, the Greyhound bus service, is just going to leave us. They have set up a room for the bus driver who has taken off, and they have left all of us there overnight in this ice rink. And the joke as it goes is that, of course, since we're all Canadians and we're stuck in an ice rink, some of the guys start joking that, hey, as long as you have skates and sticks, we can just go play hockey all night. Well, this ice rink doesn't rent skates, so we can't go play hockey. We can only sit there and stare at the hockey rink. Now we're trying to figure out what we're supposed to do. A ice rink isn't particularly warm. So if we're supposed to sit there all night, eventually it's going to get cold, especially if we're going to try and sleep. And the people working at the ice rink are now trying to figure out what they're supposed to do. And they're calling in to their boss, who is now calling in to emergency services. And eventually, the mayor of this small town shows up to find out what is going on. And he's talking to us. There's about 30 of us stuck in this hockey rink. And the mayor has shown up to talk to us, and the bus driver. He's still here around at this point, I believe. He set up the hockey rink had a canteen, and they give out free. They made us all French fries, so we all had fries to have, and the mayor, while looking into how he can help us out, the first thing he does is he goes down the street and comes back with a bunch of coffee from Tim Hortons and a couple packs of smokes. That is some of the most Canadian thing you could do, is show up to help someone in need with a Tim Hortons coffee and a pack of smokes. For those that don't know, Tim Hortons is like our national coffee brand. It is almost bigger than Starbucks in Canada. It is probably on the same line in the fact that it's like at every corner, but it's mostly just in Canada. It's not like Starbucks where it's all around the world. So the mayor, seeing all of us stranded in a hockey rink in the winter, decides he's going to give us Tim Hortons coffee and smokes. You can't get any more Canadian than that story alone. While we're eating our free French fries, drinking our free Tim Hortons coffee, and for those that smoke are having their free cigarettes, the mayor is now looking into ways to actually feed us and shelter us. He's able to set up Subway sandwiches, calls some people in and makes us some trays of sandwiches that bring down, so we're all fed for the night. They've actually just loaded us up with all kinds of sandwiches from Subways. I think I actually packed a few extras in my bag. Red Cross showed up. Their emergency services, they showed up, and they could set up only, I think, 9 hotel rooms. So there was a couple families, there was a couple old people. So of course they grabbed the kids and the older people and the families, and they got them out to a hotel room for the night. All the single males like myself were stuck in a hockey rink, and middle-aged couples, I guess. Then they showed up with some blankets and limited mats, like bed mats, to pass out to the rest of us, to help us be able to sleep. So they were limited on blankets and pillows. I don't think there was any pillows. I think it was just a few blankets and a few mats, like gym mats, that you could use to put on the cold linoleum floors. I passed up on that. Rather than fighting, there's people who grab a bunch to make themselves like a whole bed, like a nest, which is kind of selfish, because you're saying that you deserve 3 blankets and other people don't deserve 1 because you got there first. I didn't want to start any kind of confrontation with anyone. I really didn't need anything. I have a very thick leather jacket. I had very thick hoodies with me. I had my yoga mat that I carried around with me the whole time I backpacked, and I had my very thin travel sleeping bag. I unrolled all of this, put it all together, and I had myself a makeshift, bed with a pillow and a blanket and everything. It wasn't comfortable, obviously, but it got me through the night, as best you could. But and then in the morning, the mayor showed up again with more Tim Hortons, and actually had a whole bunch of breakfast sandwiches from Tim Hortons. So I grabbed a few extra big of those as well, because there was more than enough to go around. They eventually, after having lunch at the local church that fed us some awesome soup and sandwiches, we got our bus on the way, and we were back on the road, and got in a day late. Like, I think it was a total of 26 hours late from our original time. We were 2 hours late from getting in on that night as well. So it was a long day. I think in total it was probably, I left at, it was supposed to be 7 in the morning that day. We were supposed to leave, I think, and the bus didn't show up until noon, and then we didn't get in until after midnight. Yeah. Anyways, it was a very long trek. It was probably the longest trek I've had in all of my travels. But it's also the most Canadian thing to be stuck in a hockey rink overnight in the middle of in a blizzard, and then given Tim Hortons to survive on. It's so that is the Canadian adventure of traveling through Canada in the winter in a bus. As I planned out all my stops, and I made a lot of revisions to them, actually, as until I finally was ready to go, I quickly came up with an itinerary that showed that I have family pretty much in every major city in Canada. Good friends, like, or friends I grew up with that I consider family or actual family. Like I said, I come from a pretty big family, I guess you could say. I have a lot of cousins. So there's a lot of cousins to go out and see. And this trip actually was a great opportunity to be able to go and see a lot of them that I hadn't seen in a long time. Like I said, Canada is huge. So when your family is spread out across Canada, you don't always get to see the rest of your family. For instance, most of my stops included family I had not seen in about 20 years, or at least 15. But yeah, 20 years, 15 years, a long time. You realize, we've pretty much become who we are. Last time we met each other, we were kids. So we grew up, became adults, had all these life-changing, adult-forming events before we ever met each other. And now we're actually sitting down and learning who we all each are, I guess, or realizing who our cousins or, our family really is, right? To be away for so long, but at the same time, be able to sit down and act like it was just yesterday. We were, 10 years old fighting over toys, and, be able to pick up where we left off and just have so much to talk about and catch up on. The biggest and best thing about traveling across Canada was having this opportunity to see all my old friends and all my old family members and see my family that I hadn't seen in forever. Just thinking about that now actually really, makes me want to do it again. I think every so many years, maybe I should just take every 5 years, just quit my job for a few months and travel across Canada and see all these old friends, right? So, but yeah, it was great. It was great to catch up with everyone, and at the same time be able to go and train and make new friends and have new reasons to go back. It was a surreal experience when you get out there and you see everything that's in your proverbial backyard, right? Now, so all my European friends that maybe don't realize, this travel, each stop is about, I think the average bus trip was 9 hours. So I don't picture taking a bus in any one direction for 9 hours I'm pretty sure our bus trip from from Brussels to London was less than 9 hours. But yeah, you know, 9 hours between cities. A lot of those trips were overnight. I would sleep on the bus, or try to, anyways. Once I got there, I didn't do a lot of sightseeing. That's one thing I will say. I can't really do a. I was looking back and thinking I can do a podcast just talking about all my adventures going out sightseeing like I did, and then realized that I didn't do any sightseeing really when I was in Canada, because it was during the winter and there's not a lot to see. Maybe there is a lot to see if I really look for it. But in the winter, to me, number one thing to see in Canada is our immense, vast, open nature. Get out of the city into complete aloneness in nature, right? Get lost in giant forests. You can't really do that in the winter. I guess you could, but it's not as fun. You're just stuck on a snowbank. You walk in a snowbank for an hour and you've only walked 2 blocks. It's not fun. So and it's also very, very cold. There are a few stops where I think we got into negative 30 Celsius or more. I'm used to that growing up when I grew up in Ontario, so it's not a big deal for me, but it's also not something I want to be walk around in for hours on time. So there's not really a lot I can talk about for sights. I mean, I can talk about all the snow-covered trees I saw while sitting on a bus between cities, and I can talk about the awesome hospitality that my fellow Canadians have. In fact, let's talk about that. So, as I was planning out the Canadian Odyssey, there was a few spots where I didn't have any people to go and stay with. So this is where I had to work on my self-selling skills, I guess you could say. Those skills that they try and teach you when you're younger to try and talk up your resume, right? How to write the best cover letter, right? To get that foot in the door, to then, for them to then get an interview and really read your resume. So I had to work on writing up an email to get my message across without seeming creepy, coming off as fake. So it took a while to kind of get into how can I get my message across of, hey, I'm a nobody. I'm trying to travel across Canada and just, meet other people that do jiu-jitsu. All right. I know no one knows me, but would anyone be willing to bring me in, have a place for me or something, right? And it seems kind of preposterous, just kind of send out an email randomly to gyms to ask if anyone in their school would be open to hosting a complete stranger for him to come and train for a day or two. But you'd be surprised. I got a few people that were like, yeah, sure. There are people who I actually never spoke to, never met, right up until like the day or two before, and I would finally get their contact, and because I would be told from the person I'm talking to at the gym, yeah, I have a guy, don't worry, come on over. And then it's like, I'm about to get on the bus, who am I meeting up with? And they would send me a name and a phone number to text, and the person's like, yeah, no problem, I'll pick you up. Oh, you're traveling across Canada, you're training martial arts along the way, that's cool. And so I had a few places like that gave me a couch, even gave me a room to stay in, showed me around their town a bit, cooked me a home cooked meal. Yeah, it was some good times, and I realized the the Canadian people are just so open. Now, traveling through Europe, I realized that's probably due to our close European historical ties, because a lot of the people in Europe are also very open and welcoming and inviting for people that like to travel and visit small towns. But even those that didn't know, people that don't even know my story of traveling and training, I don't know how many different places I got off the bus and started walking towards wherever I was going and had someone just randomly stop, like pull up their car next to me and ask if I wanted a lift. I'm not even trying to hitchhike at this point. I don't think I ever tried to hitchhike in any of my travels. I'm just walking down the street. I know where I'm going. I have the address on my phone. I'm just gotta walk down this block to catch this other bus, or walk a few blocks to meet this person at this store, or their house is just around the corner. I had countless people just pull over and ask if I want to ride, because hey, you have a big backpack on your back. You look like you could use some help, and that was all they needed. That kind of generosity, I don't think I saw that again until, was it Germany? Yes, Germany. I don't know if maybe I just looked completely lost, or it's just everyone there is so helpful. But I swear, every time I got off a train and looked at my phone, there was a local beside me asking me if I needed help, or I don't know, where I wanted to go. Every time when I was in Germany, and I would know where I'm going. I'm just more or less reconfirming or looking at time, and most of the time I would actually tell them, "No, I'm good. I know where I'm going. I'm good." And it was like I was insulting the German locals that they couldn't help me. So next time I go, I'll have to make sure and just let them help me, and not deny their help. That was one thing I found that was really refreshing, was that one of the stereotypical attributes of Canadians being, nice, helpful people was indeed true. Everyone let me into their house, and people would just randomly offer me rides because I was walking on. Now, if you haven't seen pictures or videos of me traveling, I'm sure by this point you've seen pictures on this podcast go by on the slideshow. If you're watching that, I had 3 bags when I was traveling across Canada, because I had some extra things I was carrying with me while I went across Canada that I would finally drop off at my parents' place. So I had a very large backpack, like on my back, a hiking backpack, a big green, that I carried him around the whole trip, all around the world, for the whole 2 years. And it is a 70-liter backpack, 70 or 80, rather large. And I had that thing full all across Canada for sure. I also had a school book bag that was full, that I carried the whole way around the world as well. And that thing was, it was more for my electronics, my laptop, my camera, all the electronic needs, right? I had books. I had some reading books as well as some like notepads to write things in. So I had that I was carrying, and I think I had a third bag when I was going across Canada. But so I was weighed down. So I mean, you could see I'm carrying a lot of weight when I'm walking around from place to place. But that doesn't necessarily mean I need help. But I guess, here at least, if you see someone backpacking like that across Canada in the winter, our natural, or the people's natural conclusion is that that person could use a ride, which I'm grateful for. And please, by all means, if you're in Canada and you see someone walking on the street with many backpacks in winter, please, yes, ask them if they need a ride. Probably do. It's cold. So I will leave you with just some more stories about me being stuck in snow before we're wrapping up this podcast, and we will have to do a part 2 to actually talk about the gyms, the many gyms, the almost 50 different gyms that I saw, because I can talk forever about the martial arts culture of Canada. And I want to do a part 2 that is purely just about that culture and the gyms and the gym life in Canada, because it is a bit different. It is, I wouldn't say peculiar, but it is intriguing to see it when you compare it to European culture, I guess, of the gyms. And even then, I mean, you can break it down to different countries and whatnot. But yeah. So let's just talk more about my travels across Canada in the winter. So I totally told you about that one story of me being stuck in a blizzard. I actually, during these 3.5 months, had 3 different snowstorms I was stuck in. So that was one. That was actually the second one. The first one it wasn't much of a snowstorm. I went and met my cousins in Winnipeg. I've never been to Winnipeg, so it was a great time to meet up with old family. I was actually staying with a brother of a friend that I used to, an old teammate. His brother trains in Winnipeg, so I met up with him and stayed with his family. At that point, I believe my cousin staying in Winnipeg had like a small bachelor place or something, so it was, and had a much different schedule than me, so it was just easier to stay with a friend that trained and whatnot. So anyways, I get there, and the next day, or the day of, I get there, and it is just a blizzard outside, just snowing nonstop. I think it snowed for 2 or 3 days straight when I was there, and everyone's getting snowed in and shoveling out their driveways and plowing the roads and creating these huge snowbanks. And every person I met told me, oh, if only you were here last week. It was all nice and green and sunny and almost like still summer here. Now, I laugh because Winnipeg has the nickname as being Winterpeg. It is, along with Calgary, it is one of the most classical cities for winter weather, right? Those pictures of a city covered in a blizzard, people running to get the cover or to get home from the blizzard, in minus 40 degrees Celsius weather. That is Winnipeg and Calgary, right? It's a city that deals with a lot of snow in the winter. So it's kind of Canadian culture, right? A bit of Canadiana, right? Canadian culture to be in Winnipeg in the winter and deal with a blizzard. So if I were to show up a week beforehand, it would kind of be a bit of a late letdown to be in a city called nicknamed Winnipeg in the winter and there be no snow, right? So I was actually kind of happy that this blizzard hit. And actually, one very interesting fact about Winnipeg is, from what I'm told, they have one of the best infrastructures for dealing with snow removal in the world. Not just in Canada, but in the world. And during the 5 or so months when they're not dealing with snow, they're actually doing conferences around the world talking with other cities on how to better their snow removal infrastructure. And I was told this from pretty much everyone I was visiting in Winnipeg. Well, they're also saying, it's too bad you weren't here a week ago when there was no snow, but at least we have the best snow removal system in the world. And I got to see this. So this, like I said, this blizzard hits the city for about 2 or 3 days, just nonstop snow, giant snowbanks, and the city just didn't skip a step. They instantly had all these snow plows and dump trucks and bulldozers and all these other crazy machinery out there clearing out the streets and removing all the snow. The buses were hardly late. I think they were late maybe the first day for like an hour, and then after that, everything was just back to normal. And so here I am in this winter wonderland and not having to deal, not at all really dealing with any kind of hiccups in my transit. Just taking the bus like normal, getting to and from the gym, meet up with my cousins, all that stuff, yeah. And it was really cool watching the precision they had of being able to clear out all the streets and get traffic back on track and really just deal with the blizzard like it was just a normal rainy afternoon. Again, that part of Canadian culture I got to see. So it's actually not bad that I got stuck in a blizzard in Winnipeg. Just it's such a classical Canadian story being stuck in a hockey rink in the winter. So all this Canadian culture I got to experience. The third blizzard, because like I said, there was 3. The third blizzard was near the end of my trip when I was on the East Coast, where we had heard on the news a big blizzard was coming, and I could watch the city just kind of packing up and getting ready for it, and I thought nothing of it. And then I got stuck. This is the only time I was in a hostel in all of Canada. And I'm in this small little house. Not a small house, but it's set 3 floors to it. The top floor is the hostel. The other floors are kind of the house that runs it. I'm not too sure exactly, but they can only hold, I think, about a dozen people up on the top floor. And we watched just it become completely white outside. And it snowed for the whole weekend. And when it finally let up, the snowbank that was only at my knees when I first walked in was now at my shoulders. And the snow that was piled beside the house to clear out the parking lot was now up to our 3rd floor window. So if we really wanted to, we could have opened the window and created a slide down the packed up snow. But yeah, we were stuck for 2 days in this house. On the first day when it started snowing, I thought nothing of it. I thought it was just a heavy snow day like any other day, and I tried to leave and walk down the street to the pizza place. I figured, well, if it's going to snow, I'll grab pizza. I don't know why, but I did. And I get out onto the street, and I have a picture. Hopefully I can find this picture, and I'm using this right now in this slideshow. If you are just listening to this, you have to go to my Flickr account to Moncton, New Brunswick photo album, and you'll see this whiteout. This whiteout is a picture of all you see is just white. And, you can make up a few little objects here and there. But what this picture is an intersection. It's a 4-way intersection, lights. And you can't see any of that. When I took this picture and I'm looking, the lights I'm looking at, the street I'm on, actually have green lights. Like they can go. Not that they can see whether or not they're allowed to go or stop. But if you really look closely, in the middle of that picture is a bit of a dark shadow. That shadow is actually an excavator plowing out the intersection so that, traffic can go by. Now, luckily, no one is trying to drive in this weather, because surely they would have driven through the snow into this vehicle and just got wrecked. You can't see any of that. It was only maybe 20, 30 feet away from me. And you can't see any of that in this picture because of this whiteout. I tried walking another block or so from there and realized I couldn't get anywhere. I couldn't see anything. There was no way I was going to make it to that pizza place, unfortunately. So I ducked in to the corner store that was open, because just walking 2 blocks in this blizzard was killing me. The snow was whipping my face. It was not near as good as the pizza I was hoping for. I was stuck. I couldn't leave. And then when I got back to the hostel, we were snowed in for 2 days. We couldn't leave. We couldn't do anything. There was the same weather. If we would try to leave the next day, nothing was open. The roads were closed. It was just whiteout conditions. So all we could do was sit there and luckily we still had internet, so you can just sit there and watch movies all day on your internet. Not that it was good internet. It was rather slow. But in that weather, I'm surprised we had any kind of internet connection whatsoever. Kind of sucked being stuck in a blizzard, and it totally ruined my whole stop in Moncton. That's literally all my stop was. Is I showed up one night. The next day I went to the store to pick up some things, caught a movie, and then got stuck in snow for 2 days, and then caught the bus out the next day. So that's it for this podcast. I'll do another Odyssey and review down the road, and we'll continue on about Canada and the actual jiu-jitsu scene. But that's a bit of insight on how it was traveling across Canada in the winter. Again, unless you really like the cold and the snow and just want to feel what it's like to be Canadian in that kind of weather, I advise against taking the buses across Canada in the winter. But I'm sure there's all kinds of crazy people out there who this sounds like a fun adventure to. To you, my hats are off. Have fun. To the rest of you, have even more fun in the summer. And we'll get back to the Odyssey next podcast and continue on talking about Canada down the road. And until next time, guys.